This is not about dragging NATO countries into war. The truth is, everyone has long since been dragged into war, and definitely not by Ukraine, but by Russia.
His bravery in the face of a Russian invasion has been nothing short of remarkable and exactly what his people have needed during these unbelievably trying times. But it wasn't always shaping up to go this way for Zelensky. This former comedian who rose to fame for his portrayal of a fictional president was at one point considered to be something of a joke, but then he'd go on to win the election with 73% of the vote. Shortly thereafter, things would kick into overdrive. For instance, I bet you forgot that Zelensky played a part in the impeachment of Donald Trump, didn't you? It's alright, we've all had a lot of things on our minds these past couple of years. But now a whole bunch of us are concerned with only one thing. How is Ukraine going to survive a war with Russia? It's a Herculean task, and the leader in charge of the resistance used to be the Ukrainian voice of Paddington Bear. We're living in strange times here, people, and they're only gonna get stranger, so if you want to learn more about the world's newest political folk hero, then keep watching before they're famous. Volodymyr Zelensky was born on January 25, 1978 in Kryvyi Rih, in what was formerly the USSR, but is now very much Ukraine. His father was a professor and the head of the Department of Cybernetics and Computing Hardware at the Kryvyi Rih State University of Economics and Technology, while his mother used to work as an engineer. Going back even further, Zelensky has Jewish heritage, and his grandfather served in the Red Army during World War II after losing his father and 3 brothers to the atrocities committed during the Holocaust. When Zelensky was a little older than a small child, his family relocated to Mongolia for 4 years before eventually returning to the city of his birth. Like many people born in that area of Ukraine, Zelensky learned Russian as a child, but he also became fluent in Ukrainian English. By 1995, he was attending school at the Kiev National Economic University, and he graduated in 2000 with a law degree. Although he was licensed to practice law, Zelensky had other intentions for his career. While a student, he had become enamored with the theater, and he soon decided to enter the world of entertainment. His comedy roots lie in a longtime Russian showbiz staple referred to as KVN. That acronym roughly stands for the Club for the Jolly and the Resourceful, a former popular Soviet saying. So what exactly is KVN? Well, imagine a sketch comedy group that functions more like a professional sports team by traveling from city to city to battle other comedy groups for a spot in the major leagues.
Звучит мне нравится. Санкт-Петербург, столица Украины, класс.
All the top matches are televised across both Russia and Ukraine. It's actually kind of a cool thing. Sort of like America's Got Talent, but a little bit more interesting. Zelensky's team was called Quarter 95, and it repped the city of his birth, Kryvyi Rih. Zelensky wasn't just only a member of the team. He was also a team captain and performed under the name of Vovan. Once Quarter 95 really began to make waves in the competition, Zelensky formed a production company under the same name. His studio would go on to produce dozens of television series and events for both Russia and Ukraine, including the Ukrainian version of Dancing with the Stars, which Zelensky would win in 2006. Your boy's got moves. Putting aside the fact that that's kind of like Jeff Probst winning Survivor, Zelensky's popularity continued to climb higher and higher. After having taken over the world of television, Zelensky set his sights on film. He began to produce, co-write, and sometimes star in some trashy Russian comedies. The first was released in 2009, entitled No Love in the City, about 3 friends living it up in New York City when a curse from a magic fairy leaves them impotent until they can find true love. Does that mean they just can't bust nuts? Crazy fairies. Man, it's kind of like Sex and the City meets Cinderella. I mean, definitely not a combination I'd ever imagine mixing together, but shortly thereafter, Zelensky began to move towards politics, but not before making a huge impression on the people of Ukraine during his run on the television series Servant of the People. This 2015 sitcom was a heartfelt satire of Ukrainian politics in which a decent man finds himself suddenly thrust in the halls of power. For what it's worth, Zelensky still played the part in Russian.
Математика, царица наук у вас. Ну хорошо, математика. А история, как ты сказал, собачья. Потом мы удивляемся, а почему наши политики каждый раз приходят к власти и совершают одни и те же ошибки? Да потому что они охуенные математики. Знают только как отнимать, делить и приумножать свое. Вот и все.
After that series came to an end, Zelensky left Quarter 95 behind him to form his own political party named after his extremely popular television series. At that point, Zelensky finally made the switch from speaking in Russian to Ukrainian. In 2019, he'd achieve a landslide victory despite the fact that many people at the time were concerned that Zelensky's centrism would wind up with him getting too comfortable with Russia. Kinda ironic now, isn't it?
Я відчула розчарування, тому що Зеленський, я не маю проти особисто нього нічого, але він просто не здатний на цю посаду.
At first, Zelensky's record as president was middling. Question marks began to spring up when several of his Quarter 95 cohorts followed him into the government. Then, he straight up banned 3 television networks who tended to paint him in unflattering light. Finally, there was the entire ordeal with Donald Trump, which played out on the world stage and would result in the eventual impeachment of the US president. Not that that amounted to much.
I think you read everything. I think you read text.
Look, what I'm trying to say here is that there were doubts of his capabilities to lead up until as recently as this year. Then, Russia invaded. As soon as Russian tanks began to invade the country of Ukraine, it became painfully obvious that Ukrainians would be outmatched when it came to things like military might and weaponry. But what the Russians didn't exactly count on was Zelensky weaponizing quite possibly the most important thing of all, the narrative. It took 3 statements from Zelensky to turn the tide of his career and transform him into a national hero. The first was a speech on the eve of the war delivered in Russian and aimed at the Russian people, refuting Putin's story that Ukraine had plans to bomb the region of Donbass.
Вам говорили, что я прикажу наступать на Донбасс, стрелять, бомбить без вопросов. Хотя вопросы есть и очень простые. Стрелять в кого? Что бомбить? Донецк, в котором я бывал десятки раз.
His next career-defining moment was his legendary response to the Biden administration offering to evacuate him from the capital.
I need ammunition, not a ride, he's quoted as telling the Biden administration.
I mean, is this guy supposed to be Woody Allen or John Rambo? Finally, in that same clip was perhaps the most powerful moment of all, when he told the world, despite Russia's best efforts,
Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут, прем'єр-міністр Шмигаль тут, Подоляк тут, президент тут. Всі ми тут, наші військові тут, громадяни суспільства тут, всі ми тут.
This was also some hard dudes of gangs. That was more than enough to bolster the spirits of his fellow Ukrainian countrymen and inspire many of them to create their own signature moments of defiance. Like when an island full of Ukrainian soldiers told an advancing Russian warship to go themselves. The last thing any of them ever did. And they weren't the only ones. Much like their leader, the Ukrainian people have defied the Russians at every turn. Whether they're telling soldiers to put some seeds in their pockets or interrupting live broadcasts, the entire country of Ukraine is ready to disrupt Putin's diabolical plans.
Возьмите семечки, положите сырые, чтобы хоть подсолнухи росли, когда вы здесь пляшете.
And then there's the memification of Zelensky himself. I'm sure no one ever imagined seeing Zelensky's face on Chris Evans' body before, but now, here we are. As much fun and encouraging as that is, there's very much a good chance that by the time this video is shot and edited, that Zelensky may have been attacked and killed. It truly is a terrifying proposition. In fact, while we were writing this, the Ukrainian government announced that they had foiled an assassination plot against Zelensky, destroying the Chechen servicemen who were sent from Russia to kill him. It's a topic that Zelensky himself has addressed on national television, stating that not only is he public enemy #1, but so is his family.
Де вони зараз знаходяться, я сказати не маю права. За наявною у нас інформацією, ворог позначив мене як ціль номер 1.
And yet, despite all of that, Zelensky continues to be the face of resistance, fighting tooth and nail to keep the Russian aggressors at bay. Look, the truth is simple. Zelensky isn't a superhero despite how we may perceive him right now. He's also not a living meme or a way for most of us to live out our revenge fantasies against people who impose their power over others. He's simply a man who took a stand and said no in the face of blatant atrocity. So here's to hoping that he not only manages to achieve victory in the war against Russia, but that he also provides an example if any of us are ever called to do the same. I hope you guys have taken something from this story. Please remember to leave your comments of support for the people of Ukraine in the comments down below. We're cheering you guys on. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes.